Well, welcome. If you hadn't seen any of my videos, I'm building a little 18-foot flats boat from a set of paper plans that I traced and cut out on plywood. And this is currently what we've gotten to. Here it is. I'm putting in my deck supports. I've already ran all the main supports along the stringers. Now I'm just putting some little blocks in between the stringers so that there's absolutely no way that plywood can flex. I'm just joining these little pieces with some pocket hole screws. I've talked about those before. There you can see they've got some advantages because they're smooth shanked, they're not threaded all the way up to the top, and they got a flat head and self-drilling tips so they won't split. When that square head on them, square driver head, they're really easy to go in. Basically I've cut out all of these pieces, and now I'm just coming back and I'm putting them all in. I'm just trying to mount them so that I can make sure they're flush, screw them in, make sure they fit, make sure they're flush and all, and then I'll come back once I've mixed up some thickened epoxy and I'll take each piece back off and epoxy it in place. But I want to get everything installed so that I know that it fits, and so I'm not battling the clock with that epoxy. You can see the sun's out and the wind's blowing kind of hard. You can see the tent kind of moving around. If you hadn't followed, I'm building this boat in my backyard, so I'm actually just in a tent on a little pad here. I'm lucky enough to have the concrete pad. And I'm never built a boat before. This is my first time, so just moving along. Now all I'm doing is I'm just trying to clean up my workspace a little bit, get rid of all those clamps that I used to put the shear clamp on, I think in the last video. And I'm gonna get all that stuff stowed away and continue fitting all this. I think I've got the front here. I'm gonna start measuring that. I actually come in and I'm able to measure all of my pieces, and I have my little miter saw and all set up in my carport just so that it's I have my workbench and all in there. It's a pretty neat little setup. I may show that at some point. I just write everything down, go in there and cut it, and then I come back and install it. Now, for anybody that's got plans, the plans don't necessarily show that you have to put all this floor bracing in there. It does call for bracing along the top of the stringers, and I think that's just to be able to give you a wider base when the deck goes down or when the sole, so that it gives you a wider glue surface. But I'm just putting all this other brace in there. I'm a pretty big fella, so I just want to make sure that that it's as solid as possible. It's a little bit more lumber, but I don't mind going through the extra effort and maybe hoping that it'll last a much longer time. So that's why I'm going through the trouble of putting all these little braces and all that stuff in there. And this is 3/4 by 3/4 Douglas fir. It's all clear. It's really nice looking wood. It's got some slow growth, tight grain. I've really been impressed with the wood that I got. I actually had to special order it from my local shop. Any of y'all out there trying to source wood, just call around and talk to them. Even if they don't carry it, they can probably order it from a wholesaler that's close by, and that's what I had to do. This is kind of a little bit of a different video. It's going to be a little bit longer, and I've actually slowed the time lapse down. This is actually the speed, or the hyperlapse is the cameras, or whatever they call it. But I just wanted to show this process. I mean, it takes a while. You figure, how does this stuff happen? And I've mentioned this in other places, that this is just kind of it's a sucky little process, because you work and it takes forever and it's tedious. And at the end of the day, you don't see any major gains, but you just have to embrace these little bitty pieces like this, and it's gonna take days where you're having to deal with this detailed stuff to make it work. Like even here in the stern, I've already measured and cut all these, but I didn't think that I was gonna have the overlap in the pieces, so I actually had to take a lot of them and go measure them again and cut them and fit them. And that's why I'm doing this right now, where I don't have epoxy on a board that I'm worried about kicking off and getting hard. I'm able to take my time. And in this video, like when I'm doing this, this transom's really kind of got me. I do a lot of thinking, I'm really trying to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of time. And in that transom, what I decided to do, and I don't know if I show it this time or not, but that transom, because it's on an angle, I'm gonna actually just square off of that transom and use that same angle for the top of the motor well compartment or whatever, so that it'll actually have some fall. And then I'll put at least one, maybe two partitions or two ports, through holes or whatever, back there in that transom, so that any water that gets in that motor well will just drain out naturally. Well, good morning. Had a lot of rain this morning, but getting out here, all this has been bedded in. This is the backing plate for the bow eye. Have to kind of sand this little bit down right here. It's a little bit proud of coming across there, so I just want to sand that down. We're gonna make some thickened epoxy and fill all this up, taper it all back into here, and then we're gonna come in and put that fiberglass. We're gonna do that today, and you're gonna see coming up here when I put in all of these braces. So there'll be a little bitty triangular piece up here in the bow that'll go in, and you really didn't get to see it because my other camera cut off, but got all of these other braces in here. You can see more the way that stuff comes across over there. So that's all perfectly well, with the exception of, you're gonna see me come in here today, this center section in here is too short of a level, but you can see in here. Now let's see if I can show it. This center section here is about 1/8 of an inch or so too high, maybe a little bit more than that. So I'm gonna get my little planer in here, and I'm gonna come in here and plane that off so that all of this deck and all will sit flush and flat. And then we're gonna start pulling all this stuff off and bedding it with epoxy. It's very anticlimactic stuff today, but we're gonna do that, and then this afternoon or tomorrow I'll probably show, maybe I'll show on the screen where I'm gonna come in here and attach to these this transverse bulkhead and that transverse bulkhead there. I'm gonna build a little cradle, a little rolling cradle here, so that I'm gonna pull this out and roll it over, but it's going to give me a couple of steps, and it'll support it. It'll kind of all be supported off of these two, but they'll be pretty close into here. You'll see. I'll show you a drawing right here as I'm talking through this. You'll see that drawing where I have the 45s on it, and may talk through that later. But that's so. Here's a rendering. You can see the stringers and the bulkheads there that I'm going to attach this to, and that's what I'm going to use whenever I roll it over. It'll roll onto those to keep it up off the ground, and then that'll be what's mounted on top of the cradle. But that's all I'm going to do today, is try and come in here and pull all these little bitty pieces now that they're all fit, and especially those over there. They've been kind of molded in there, so they ought to be go back in there. It's a lot of little bitty pieces. Pull it off, put some epoxy on it, pop it back on. So that's going to be the plan today. It'll probably take me a while. Like I say, getting a fairly late start at it. It's it's 12:47 now, so we'll see how it goes, and we'll probably just leave this stuff running so you can see what's going on. So here it is. I'm just grinding off the top of that little backing plate for that bow eye. It was just a little bit tall from where those chines were, and now I'm going to get in here with my little planer, like I showed you how that one little center section. So I bet you, I don't know if I took out 1/8 or whatever, and I'm just in there hooking up to my vacuum just so that I don't have any dust or anything like that. I do have my respirator on, or my face shield, respirator, dust mask, whatever. But I'm running that vacuum on there as well, and then I hook up the belt sander where I just can't get close enough, and I'm just making sure all that's clean. So when I put that deck in there, I want to make sure that it sets flush, and I'm actually going to be putting my fuel tank where I was just standing, which will be in the aft section of that compartment right there, where you can see that that plane where I'm standing right there. The fuel tank will be on the aft section of that, and then everything forward of that will be storage. This forward compartment, I will make an anchor locker, which will actually set up above these little pieces that I'm about to put in. I think I'm actually going to start making some epoxy here, and we're going to start mounting these. So that's what we're doing now, making thickened epoxy. I'm still using a slow hardener. It's actually pretty warm this day. You can see me, I'll start sweating, but I'm still using a 2-to-1 epoxy with a slow hardener. So with the slow hardener, it gives me more time, thankfully. And in this case, I take it and spread it out on a board, and it really lasts a good long time. I think I only made about 16 ounces of resin, so that would take 32 ounces of fumed silica or Cabasil to mix with that, because I wanted this fairly thick as I'm putting it on there. Now I just put that little bow section on, because that kind of becomes my table. And so now all I'm doing is I'm taking off those things little piece by piece. And you see here I'm spreading that epoxy out, because if the thinner you have it, the more time you have before it'll start kicking and getting hard, because it doesn't have as much mass to kick off. Don't get me talking chemistry. I'm not a boat builder, but I'm damn sure not a chemist. So all I'm doing here, once again, I take them off piece by piece. I tried using my little notch spreader, and it just doesn't work as well. So I wound up using that. In the end, I wound up using more of that little red spreader right there. And I would almost make like a little V of epoxy, maybe a 1/4 inch thick or whatever. In the center, I'd make a little V down the edge, and so then when I put it in and it would squirt out, it would press out of both sides. Then I could just come back and scrape that off. But I knew at that point that I had good epoxy contact. And so that's just the theory that I use and the method that I use throughout all this. There's a lot of it. And since I went through the suck of doing all this, I'm going to let it play, because maybe it helps somebody. And you can see what it takes, and it just keep going. When you get to these things, you just have to embrace it and get started, stay on it, and just get it done, because this is one of those things I've been dreading, and I've put it off and I've put it off, but I'm just glad that in the end I got on it and I did it, and now I won't have to worry about this ever again. I know that whenever I go to put this decking in, number one, I'm gonna have plenty of surface area to put all the boards, so that the plywood and all is supported everywhere, and I know that all of this stuff is really bound tight to the top of all that, and I can feel good about it moving forward. Now I will say this about those pieces where it starts getting you start getting into where that bow is coming together, and it's got a pretty good amount of arc and all in there. You can see even sitting there for a day, it's already bent. It is a good idea to put a little, like I was talking about that little triangle, put a little bit more epoxy on the back side of that, because as that thing turns and rotates in there, it'll make sure that it fills all those voids and all. And because anything that squeezes out of there, you can always come back and scrape that off and use that on the next board. And you'll see I actually get smart enough as I get farther along in this, that as I'm scraping that, I have the next piece I'm gonna mount on, and I actually just scrape it and put it on the new piece. But you know, the other part was just don't get too far ahead of yourself. And then I come back, and actually there was some of these places where I had to put clamps on just to help kind of hold that tight, because I couldn't get screws in there or whatever. And that's what you see me doing there, putting some of those clamps and screws. I've also come back and gotten a marker, and everywhere that I have a screw hole that I've mounted, I put a mark on the boards, so that I know once I pull the screws and all that, I'm gonna make some thickened epoxy and come back and fill every one of them little holes, screw holes and all that I use. I'm gonna come back and fill those holes with thickened epoxy. And like I said, I'm gonna all this stuff's being glued in, as you can see. And after it cures, I'm gonna come back and pull all of these screws out, so that my plan is to not have any metal, anything, even stainless, that can corrode, rust, whatever, down and underneath the deck of the boat. So that's why I'd put those marks on there. And I think I talked about this in the past, that it had gotten quite a bit cooler, like when I was doing the transom. If you hadn't seen, I mean, I'm doing a whole playlist. Everything I've done on this boat has been, I mean, everything has been captured in video or time lapse or whatever, and I have videos going back. So go back and check that out. But everything that I've done in this boat, I've done with slow hardener, with resin and slow hardener. And with that cool weather that we had, it takes a long time. You know, when you get below 70 degrees, this resin is really slow to react and kick, but it will. I mean, it's not that it won't get hard, it takes it a while. So single-handedly, by just me ordering some medium hardener, which I could use, you know, that'll get in hot weather, it's probably not going to work for me because I don't work fast enough, but in these cooler temperatures, it would save me some time having to wait for epoxy to cure. So all it took was for me ordering some of that. And now here it is, we have hot weather, you know, the first week of December, and it's in the 80s. So I'm about out of slow hardener, so that's about the way that it goes. But we've got the all of these bracings and all going in. I talked about before, I'm trying to figure out, I think I just have a couple more things to do, and I'm gonna be ready to roll this boat over. And when I roll it over and start on the bottom, I'm gonna be starting on it to finish it. So once it goes upside down, whenever I get ready to flip it back over, it will probably be directly on the boat trailer, but I may actually put it back in the cradle just for some stability or to keep the height down or whatever. I'm still contemplating that, but I want to have the sides of the boat completely done as much as I can. I'm still thinking through that process, and I'm apprehensive about a couple things, but I'd like to be able to, once I flip it back over, that it's totally done, which I may have to do more stuff before I flip it. There's so many things going through my head at times, and right now I'm thinking about, but that's what we're going to do with this project going forward. Is we're just going to keep going, and I'm trying to have it done by Memorial Day 2023, so that's kind of my self-inflicted wound deadline. So I'm going to keep working towards that, and hopefully I don't have any family issues in the bad way, but you know, the good things are good. And like my son's graduating this weekend, super proud of him. It's fantastic. So between chasing my daughter in soccer and my son's now graduating, he got married 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago recently, so there's lots of good stuff happening here too. You see me take those little cross braces there, those floor braces. Those are actually 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, and it's just to give me a little bit more room to be able to work in this hole right here. Yeah, and like I said, I was kind of letting this run, not being lazy on the production side. It's just that, you know, I don't want to get to where I'm going through this so fast you can't really see what it takes. I mean, granted, you've seen enough of this that it should be pretty self-evident, but I mean, I know that even myself, as I was researching and getting ready to do this, I watched all I could, and repetition sometimes helps. But I also want to go back. Once again, the channel's continuing to grow. I'm very thankful for that, and I'm hoping, you know, we're almost at 700 subscribers right now, and as soon as I get to 1,000 subscribers, no matter I'm not worried about this. It's not a money deal, but it's more like just an accomplishment. I want to try and give back to those that want to do this, that may not be able to have what it takes, and maybe we can spur them on. I'm gonna actually buy a set of plans on my own nickel. Salt's not sponsoring this or anything. At least not at this point. I'm not doing it because of their sponsorship or anything, or credit or special or whatever. But I want to give it away so somebody else can do this. This project it's a massive undertaking, you know, for most people, and it's such a cool thing to do, and it has a lot of fulfillment to it. So I want to be able to try and share that. So when we get to that point, I'll figure out some way to do how I'm going to do it. I'll figure it out, but I like talking about that. That's why you may not see me advertising this a lot, because I want this for the people that are really consuming this video and consuming these things I'm trying to do and trying to share with people. And look, I love the interaction, people commenting. I'd love to do a Q&A or something like that. If you know, whatever, people want to ask questions, ask me a question in the comment box, and you know, my goal is, and right now I'm 100%, somebody's asking a question, I make a comment, I like to respond. I want to be engaged, so please feel free to engage with me on that and comment, and we you know, we'll just keep moving forward with this thing and see what happens. That's going to bring us to the end of this video. Appreciate you watching. Please hit that subscribe button, like, comment, whatever, and come back and see what happens next time.